We are live. Oh, back at the Tecumseh in Annapolis.
Live again. Uh-oh. It's hat time.
Is it hat time?
Is it hat time?
Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be back with my good friend, Barry Brown here. Are you excited to have me back?
I am. I'm very excited to have you back.
Everyone, we welcome any comments about Barry's glasses this evening that do match his shirt. You're welcome. I just want to start off with that.
I was good because it matched my print.
As well as your whole
font.
Let us know if you can see and hear us okay. Thanks, everyone, for being here once again with us for another edition of Virtual Vino with DMV. Just make sure everything is working. Let us know where you guys are watching from this evening and what you got going on in your cup tonight. We have a great lineup for you, and I'm so excited to try them.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
I agree. What do you have in your cup over there? I see some people from Newmarket.
All right.
Oh, Mindi has the Cerro, Crianza, and Reserva. Yeah. So you can drink along with us. How about that? No. Just making sure we got good sound tonight for you all. Jess, is that better?
Live at the Tecumseh.
Williamsport. Oh, in DeBary, Florida. Yeah, we got some people from Florida on here. Hi, Christy. Yeah, I stole, we're not going to be drinking any white wine this evening, so I did steal Barry's white wine tasting hat, just for a little bit. Hey, Kevin, how's it going? Yeah, Rioja Day is the best day. We have an amazing guest this evening. I'm going to talk about him in just a few minutes. We're going to let a few more of you join in here before we get going. Oh, Arnold, Maryland. Hello. Cheers here at Pop-Up Shop. Thanks so much for being a sponsor of our giveaways. Can't wait to talk about your giveaway later. We do have some really great giveaways. I know. I wish I was on the other side so I could score some of them. Maybe if I do like cute puppy dog eyes someday, like I'll score some.
Great swag.
All right, let's see here. Give us 1 minute. We're going to be right on back in just a sec. Okay, how's that? Good, good. All right, we're getting two big thumbs up over there. Cheers.
Good.
Oh, technology. You're so fun. That's why we have wine. Did you know that that's why wine was invented so many years ago?
To deal with technology?
Yes.
Okay, that abacus thing, you know?
Yeah, that's not a trivia question this evening, but it should be, and it could be. So once again, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Virtual Vino with DMV. I believe this is our eighth or ninth one.
All right.
It's our ninth Virtual Vino with DMV. And I've been away from Annapolis for a couple weeks. I know Barry Brown here missed me.
I'm glad to have you back.
But I'm ready with a great lineup this evening. We do have an amazing line of Rioja Reds tonight that are 90 points and higher. So all of these wines are complete knockouts. I'm so excited to try them with you all. We also have a very special guest, Juan Rodriguez. He's actually the National Sales Director of Bodegas Olarra. So Juan's going to join us.
And he's totally cool.
Totally cool. I agree. Juan is amazing. We're so happy that he's here with us. I hear he's going to share some fun stories about Barry later. You know,
let's hope not.
Well, you know, I'm not going to say it. This show is for 21 age and older, so it could happen, guys. So how about it? Pour yourself a delicious glass of wine. If you are drinking the Riojas with us this evening, pour yourself the Crianza first. Let's have another fun evening of learning about new wines, drinking delicious wines, and eyeing up Barry in his new glasses.
It's great to be sharing wine with everyone once again. It's been too long, and this is extra special for me because not only do I get my friend Devin back, but also joined by a close friend, Carlos, who I had the wonderful opportunity to spend time with in Spain. And he's going to try to, he's going to be the same kind of great guide he was when I was there with him. He's just a lot of fun, very knowledgeable. I think you all are really going to enjoy what he's going to bring to the table, and try to bring the fun that we had in Spain to us virtually. It's going to be different than our previous virtual tastings. It's going to be focusing on one winery, and it's going to be focusing on a specific region with the Riojas. And one of the most fun things to do, and this is the perfect wines to do it with, is doing vertical tasting. And we're going to have an opportunity to do that virtually. And that's something that when we're at the wineries, it's so cool. It's one of the coolest things to do, is where they'll bring out different years of the same wine. But Carlos is a great guide. He's going to demystify some of the terminology as we go through and explain what some of the classifications mean with Riojas, enable us to become an educated enthusiast of Rioja wines. You'll discover why it's one of the most tremendous values in the world of wine. And, we talk about QPR, quality price ratio. We're actually going up a little bit in the price point with this tasting. But if you're comparing this to other regions, it is a steal, an absolute steal. And you'll see why it's got such an incredible quality price ratio. You want to tell us about some giveaways?
Yeah. So right before we bring Carlos on here, Gigi. Oh, hey. He's actually in New York. So he's safely in New York right now, not broadcasting from Spain. But remember, guys, we're going to have trivia throughout this evening, all Rioja-based questions for you tonight. We have some great giveaways, as you can see up on the screen here. Thank you so much to Here Pop-Up Shop, Choquette Chocolates, and Firefly Farms. So we have a gift card from Firefly. We have 5 packs of Choquette Chocolates and an awesome wine glass this evening from Here Pop-Up Shop that's going to be available for you to win. If you do happen to win, if we call your name for any of the trivia questions, please just send us a message at DMV Distributing's Facebook page with your email and address so that we can give you your goodies.
All right.
And then I want some sent to me as well. I'm going to write my own. I'm going to write. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Juan Carlos on screen here. We're so pleased to have him tonight. We were just chatting a few minutes ago, and I can't wait for him to teach you all about the amazing Rioja region tonight.
So yeah, if you've joined us before, again, welcome back. If it's your first time joining, I'm Barry. I'm Director of Sales for DMV Distributing. And, I could say so many great things about Juan Carlos, and all of them would be true, and all of them are wonderful. And he's one of the funniest, most informative guys that you're going to opportunity.
A few drinks in, and we're not there yet tonight, so that's not going to quite happen yet.
Well, cheers.
So, but I always enjoy our visits.
Eventually, Juan.
You tried to put a few drinks in me, but it didn't quite happen.
We did our best.
We're almost there, but yes, we had some fun times in Rioja. Well, we did. We were in Humilla, Rioja. Barry, refresh me. Humilla, Rioja. I can't remember. That's how bad it was. So my stories are going to be, I don't know.
Let them rip. Let them rip.
We did Madrid for a day.
Yep, we did.
We did Humilla, 2 days in Rioja, and a day in Madrid. I think there's something else that I'm missing there. I might be mistaken, but
The
I apologize. I got off track.
no, I think it was Familia and then Rioja.
But a lot of miles, and Barry was my co-pilot throughout that trip. Him and a gentleman from New Jersey, Peter, which were the guys that kept me awake, kept me from falling asleep, and our 9 o'clock in the morning beers and so on and so forth, instead of drinking the espresso.
And they don't start eating until midnight. So I mean,
yeah, we did that, and I was going back to our trip, and Devin, it was odd because we had to change the dates at the last time, and my night in Rioja, because I drove one of the vans for the group, so I didn't stay with them the night before because I worked for Olarra. They visited another property in Rioja, which was Oscar Tobia, the previous night. So my night, we met up with, I think it was like 20 to 30 English wine reps, retail owners, and whatnot. No, we all had dinner, a steak dinner at a restaurant, but it was roughly 30 English men and women from England. I don't know if you recall that.
right.
But that was a story for another day. That was bad and winding up in a karaoke bar at the end of the night, but that's another night.
Well, we'll start drinking some Vino, and then maybe we'll get a few of those out of you.
Anyway, I represent the winery from Rioja, Spain, from Logroño. We have 2 properties with her in Rioja. We visited both of them with Barry. Our flagship winery is obviously Bodegas Olarra, where we'll be tasting pretty much all the wines that we're tasting tonight. You do have another wine from us from a separate property that we went to as well, which is called Bodegas Olarra, which is just outside of Logroño in a town called Viana, which is in Navarra, but all the fruit is sourced from Rioja. But tonight we're focusing in on Bodegas Olarra, which is our flagship winery. Established, the concept was established in late 1960s, 67, 68, and the project, the winery that we know as of today, came into existence in about 1972, 1973. It was a group of investors or iron tycoons from the Basque region of Spain that wanted to get into the wine business. Devin will put up a picture of the winery at one point or another, but at the time when we built the winery, we contracted what quite possibly was the most sought after architect in Spain at the moment. So this is like the Franco years. And it was a gentleman by the name of Juan Antonio. I'm going to mispronounce his last name, but Hero. And he was one of the most sought after winemakers. He had never, architects, but he had never done a winery. But together, we had contracted the most famed winemaker in Rioja at the moment, which is a gentleman by the name of Isabel Garcia, which was dubbed the witch doctor of Rioja, Grupo de la Rioja, because it was rumored that he would make wine out of water, and that was the folklore behind them. And it's a gentleman that came with a lot of pedigree. He passed away about 2 years ago, but he was still producing wine at Olarra and Ondare up until 2 years ago under his own label, and mostly Cava because he had a passion for it. And me and Barry, prior to this, we're talking about Cava production and sparkling wine production. That's how it came to us in Rioja because of the winemaker that we had contracted. But so Bodegas Ondare as a whole, as a winery, one was established in our winemaker from 1973 up until the early 1990s. Isabel Garcia was our winemaker. He was the most famed winemaker within Spain at the time, and we contracted the most sought-after architect to construct our winery. Barry was at the winery, and it was something that was constructed over 40 years ago, until to this day is functional as a modern-day winery. So 40 years later, our winery is up to the standards of what new wineries are doing now. So this was the brainchild of this famed winemaker as well as architect, and the picture that Devin showed up, it kind of looks like an airplane. So part of that the fuselage. English is a second language to me at times, but You see the two wings on the end, but the fuselage, which is on the back, that's our reception area, and that's where we have all our stainless steel tanks, cement, concrete tanks, our tanks in the ground, our oak vats, and then the two wings that you see are kind of bottling and labeling and everything else. But that's our main thing. And then that little circle that you see, there's about 111 domes that are off to the right-hand side. That's our barrel aging room, which houses roughly 30,000 barrels. That is huge for Rioja. And that's, Barry, it's hard to believe. Those 30,000 barrels have become 40 to 45,000 barrels in the last 2 years.
That's great.
3 years. When we were there, they were constructing an additional cellar room we haven't doubled, but almost to double our capacity from what we were. And we'll discuss this a little later on in regards to the new rules and regulations for Rioja. So we were already doing what Rioja has put as new rules and regulations for us within the DO. So we'll discuss that a little later on as we taste some of the wines. But that's pretty much in a nutshell. And I've been working for Olarra since 1998. It's been a great, 1999 I started with them. So 11 years. It's been a great run for me. And that's our the picture that Devin just put up right now. It doesn't do it justice, but that's kind of the ocean of barrels that you see within Olarra. Once again, between 28 to 30,000 barrels that we have to manage, and we pretty much
fantastic.
Kind of retire anywhere from 10 to 15% of that production on a yearly basis. So it's a huge investment from us. But we're in the production of wine. There's no doctoring of wines or anything like that. This is real, and primarily French we focused in on, and French barrels in comparison to American oak barrels are almost double or triple the price depending on who you're dealing with. So it's a huge investment on our end, and we're traditional Rioja winemakers at an affordable price point. And I think we had the privilege of trying some stuff outside of Rioja, outside of Bodegas Olarra from other Rioja producers in Spain. And I think you kind of, speaking to Barry, you kind of got the idea of what Olarra is about. It's about affordability and quality and tradition and a sense of, it has an identity. I think it's something that belongs within Rioja.
And tell me a little about the traditional versus modern style.
We're going to get into subregions. Let me talk about subregions just real quick, just a tidbit, because I don't want to get too technical. But you have, Devin, you're spot on. You have Rioja Alavesa, which is, Alavesa means elevated. It's the most upper and most elevated portion within Rioja. Depending on who you speak to, that's some of the most sought after fruit and the most worthy fruit. And then if you speak to somebody from Rioja Alta, which is the heart of Rioja, the capital, then they're proud of their fruit, and that's the best fruit that you're able to get from Rioja. And then you have a secondary wine producing region, a third wine producing sub-region within Rioja. And Barry, this is one of these curveballs that Rioja has thrown to us in the past year.
Right.
Rioja Baja is no longer called Rioja Baja. It's called Rioja del Oriental. So Rioja of the Orient, I guess. And that's where you get that Mediterranean influence. It's a richer, deeper, fuller fruit. So that's from Rioja Baja. But you could get richer, deeper, fuller fruit from anywhere in Rioja. But those are your three sub-regions within Rioja in a nutshell.
And how much are we going to be seeing the villages being listed?
It's going to take a while, especially for Reserva and Gran Reserva juice, because this is something that was instituted just a year and I think it was a year and a half ago,
right?
Give or take. So aging requirements, you need to be in the bottle for 2 years, so you need to document that this juice actually came from there. So if you're a Reserva quality wine, it's 3 years that you need aging requirements in order to get to that level. If you're producing a young wine or a Crianza wine, within 2 years you'll start to see it, and a young wine even earlier than that. And that's something that you'll see the younger wines and the Crianzas come to light before you see the Reservas and Gran Reservas, because that's logically going to take you a lot longer, because you need it to be documented that it came from a specific village, specific subregion, specific town, whatever you want to dub it. So it's going to take a little bit more time to get there. If you're doing a young wine that's a year and a half aging, you're off the market already. If you're dealing with Reserva or Gran Reserva, you're 3 to 5 years out. Not 3 to 5 years from the introduction of it to be able to go to market with it.
Wow.
Right.
I love all the different classifications there. Now, you have the Crianza then.
This is the Crianza that I poured out before. I already switched off the bottle for you, but that's somewhere there. I'll figure it out.
Oh, he drank the whole bottle?
Yeah. 2015
That's my man.
Yeah.
I put it out before. I already switched my Corv into the Reserva just to be ready for the next wine.
Perfect.
And I've been sipping on it. But this is an above average Crianza, in my opinion. So once again, we're Bodegas Olarra. We produce it. We have 30,000 barrels. We produce quite a bit of wine. Not all of it goes to one wine. It's a bunch of brands that we have, different signature that we're looking for. It's something that's made in the vineyard, not necessarily in the winery. So it's their natural wines and the natural progression of evolution of the wine. So Cerro Añon is our flagship, our primo juice within. We have better wines and we have pricier wines, but this is our kind of our mainstream top tier brand, and one of our original brands from Olarra when we launched Bodegas Olarra. So this is our primo juice that goes into here, and this is not our average Crianza. This is a Crianza that I feel that Crianzas are made to be drank a little bit younger, and I want to make wine I want you to have wine that you're going to drink today, not 10 years from now. But this is a Crianza that's age worthy. And it's something that'll stand the test of time for the next 7+ years. So it's a Crianza that's above its grade.
So when the first classification on would be the Rioja without the aging, right?
You have a Vino
very
Joven.
little oak.
You have a Vino Joven, which is no aging restrictions, nothing at all.
Correct. Okay.
Rublet, which is not really used, which is like a semi Crianza, where it doesn't necessarily see a full year of oak. And it's, it'll still classify under a Vino Joven. I don't have a young bottle of red wine over here with me, but that would be a green seal on the back. So
okay.
Crianza would be 2 years of aging. So Rioja does this kind of classification system, and you see this little red seal over here. That's the seal that they issue for Crianza.
It's one of the few places where these classifications actually mean something.
It does, and it doesn't, because sometimes it's a restriction.
Right.
You might have a fantastic vintage where a wine is going to accept, 3 years of oak aging, and then you might have a vintage where the wine doesn't necessarily need to age for 3 years. So it's a handy. It's a note of quality, especially when you get into Reservas and Gran Reservas, but sometimes it's kind of like a handicap. It used to mean a lot more than it does now, but it still means a lot.
Okay, so you think the classification change is diluting it?
The people get shot for less than this, but no, okay. I think it's still I'm not putting a fruit that's not going to be age worthy into oak for 2 years, because it's not going to work out for me. So I'm looking for the highest quality fruit that I have to make Reserva and Gran Reserva. So we're sourcing out, and we pay dollars for the kilo that we purchase as far as quality is concerned. So, but if you have that green label in the back and it's not, and it's a $50 bottle of wine, it doesn't make it less because you didn't age it for 5 years.
Right.
It's kind of what you were talking about, where you go from that subtle Pinot Noir like characteristic from Rioja, which is very typical of Rioja. So when you go that full throttle, pedal to the metal cab style wine from Rioja with a Tempranillo base, where it doesn't necessarily see 2-3 years of oak aging. It saw 18 months, or it saw the same amount of time, but it just, just bigger, thicker fruit. Once again, we're talking sub-regions. You get richer, deeper fruit from certain areas, and then slightly more elegant, more acidic fruit from other sub-regions. But there's microclimates within Rioja where you're able to get that same concentration in a sub-region that shouldn't give you that. So there's microclimates, macroclimates within the microclimate, or the other way around.
Okay. So minimum of 2 years, though, right, on this?
For Crianza, you're
Yes.
still at the standard 2 years. It could be anywhere from 8 months to 14 months that we do the oak aging for, and then
Right.
the remaining time up to 2 years in the bottle.
And every reviewer that worth their salt that reviewed this has all given it 90s. I mean, it's not just us saying it's a great wine.
It got a 92 points by James Suckling and Decanter, and 91 points by Tim Atkin.
And there was a 92-point decanter rating too. That
Exactly.
the time that we submitted it, because decanter, they're a little bit more. Well, it's not that they're more difficult. We submitted it prior to it being a legal Crianza, so they just called it Cerro Añón 2015.
Okay.
And this is what we were talking about, quality. Normally in a Crianza, my normal Crianza right now, I'm at the end of my 2017 vintage, and I'm entering my 2018 vintage, and I already have some 2018 vintage. So it's very rare for me to have a 2015 Crianza in the marketplace. And as you can see from this wine, I mean, it's still underdeveloped. It still has a lot more to give you. And we're talking about a 5-year-old Crianza at the moment. Within the next 3 to 4 months, it's a 6-year-old Crianza, and nowhere close to showing you its true identity. It just still has a lot of depth to it. You get that pretty Tempranillo floral characteristic to it. And across the night, we're doing Tempranillo. We've gone away from Grenache a little bit over the past couple of years, and more of a concentration of Masuelo and Graciano, which I like to call the two lost boys of Rioja, but perhaps two of the most important varietals of Rioja. Tempranillo is king, but you have a backbone to Tempranillo, and that's what Rioja is known for, blending and mixing the sub-regions for the ultimate brand, the ultimate wine that you're getting at the end.
Now, the Masuelo is also known in other parts of the world, as well as other parts of Spain, as Cariñena, right?
Correct. Masuelo is Cariñena, and pretty much
or
everywhere else.
Carignan if you're in
Correct.
in France. So,
and
so when you're exploring wines like we do, and it's sometimes it makes it intimidating because you're saying, "Wait, I don't know what this Masuelo grape is," but you know Carignan. And that's the fun part of exploring. And
we do it as a blending grape, and we do it at Olarra, and a lot of other producers do it as a standalone grape as well. So we're able to get the acidity, the color, the fruit. We're able to get everything out of it that we want to. It's just a more difficult grape to work with than Tempranillo. You know why Tempranillo is called Tempranillo, Devin, or no?
The Tempranillo.
Why is it called Tempranillo?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Temprano, which means early. So it's an early ripening grape. So
Okay,
Rioja
right.
It's one of the easiest growing wine regions within Spain, just because it's a great climate. But we still suffer from colder temperatures at the later stage. So you need a grape that's going to harvest. You're going to be able to harvest early. So temprano means early, and Tempranillo is the name of the varietal.
Okay.
It's a grape that ripens a little bit earlier than everything else. So Masuelo, Graciano, and Grenache will probably stay on the vine for a little bit longer period of time. And Masuelo is very Carignan, and the Masuelo and the Graciano are very inconsistent grapes, and they stay on for much longer period of time. So it's kind of a berry picking, a lot of lost fruit that you get in the end, because it's an uneven ripening of the cluster, and Tempranillo you're able to harvest and kind of bring in.
And for people who are discovering the Rioja region and the reds, and Carlos mentioned this before, I like to describe it as if you love cabs and you want that age worthiness of a cab, but you want some of the fruit of a Pinot Noir, you can kind of get that with that grape. Would you agree with that?
There's a question up here from Mindi, and it's like how much longer would you want to hold on to a Crianza? And this is kind of, it's a double, what she's asking and what you're asking. So Crianza, I think it's going to age a little bit. We're making Crianzas to be had a little bit earlier on. We're making a Crianza to be, it's not a young wine, but it's a wine to be consumed within the first year to 2 years of release. I told you that the Cerro Crianza is not your normal, your average Crianza. It's a Crianza that's able to age for a much longer period of time. I probably have some 2010 Crianza, which was Decanter's top rated wine almost a decade ago. The wine is not a decade ago, 5-6 years ago. The wine is still spectacular. And I have a couple of bottles that I have with me, and I opened them up, and the wine is still drinking. So it's a Crianza that'll age. I have other Crianzas that I produced that are still good, 5 years down the line, but it's not the same as it was when it was originally released. So a Crianza, in my mind, not that I'm right or wrong or on the authority, are wines that are made more to be consumed earlier on versus, for the next 10 years.
Good. That means we can finish the bottle now. I feel bad.
That's right.
I'm all about you finishing bottles.
Exactly. Now, what
you holding on to anything?
what food would you pair with a Crianza?
Rioja, I'm not me, but my parents are from Galicia, Spain, so from the northwestern part of Spain, and we produce a lot of Mencía there. So Mencía is one of my favorite grape varietals. I absolutely love it, and it's for marketing purposes was compared to Cab Franc. Rioja is one of my second, my first or second. I work for them now, so it's my first. Let's go back. It's my favorite wine producing region in Spain. The thing I like about Rioja, honestly, all kidding aside, is that it kind of dumbs down for you when it needs to, and it kind of beefs up when it needs to beef up. So you could even, with Crianza, a slight little chill on it, you could dumb it down with something rich and ripe and spicy. But you could do anywhere from a chicken-based dish, a cuisine type dish, into something gamey, and it'll round the gamut for you. Anything gamey, venison, lamb is absolute the cheat note there or whatever. But I love Rioja with anything. My only unwritten rule is white wines with shellfish, and that's the Galician side that comes in through for me, where I like my shrimp, my mussels, and this and that and the other. I just like a fresh white wine with that. But as far as fish is concerned and going into meats, a nice elegant red that has great acidity to it and some nice structure to it, I'm all game.
I totally agree.
Once again, barbecue, meats, you could do chicken, you could do pork, you could do a cuisine style dish. I mean, Barry, we did Cerro Reserva at dinner at Maison Higues in Logroño. I don't know if you remember, but we did those big steaks that night, and we did a Reserva, and it was the beefiest, gamiest ribeye steak that I've ever had. And the steak was butter, and the wine was like silk on your palate. It was the perfect combination. And the reason that I'm bringing that up is that prior to that, we only did vegetables that he picked from the garden with a little bit of olive oil and sea salt on it, sometimes a little bit of garlic. And the wine dumbed down for the vegetables that you were having, and beefed up for the steak that you were having. And we did the same red wine. We had a white wine as well, but we did the same red wine across the board. And I'm remembering now, we did a white Rioja that you fell in love with, Barry.
That's right.
It was the Añares.
Yeah.
See, stuff is starting to come back to me. We're going to get in trouble.
We also did a Crianza that they brought up from the cellar that was caked in mud and crusty, and no one knew how it was going to be. It was like 25, 30 years old.
It would have been, I can't remember, and I think I had the photo, but it would have been either Olarra or Cerro Añón. And I think it was an Olarra Clasico, and it was Crianza that we had.
That's right.
It was either Cerro Añón or Olarra Clasico Crianza that we had. And yeah, it was a 20, 30-year-old wine, and the wine was absolutely, we did it out of a mag.
Right.
It's better, but the wine was absolutely spectacular.
Exactly.
It's nowhere close to what we're having today. It's evolved, obviously, but those balsamic notes and those subtle nuances, but it really screamed Rioja.
I love it. Now, before we move on, everyone that is participating and watching with us this evening, I definitely want to ask about your tasting notes for this Juan Carlos. Obviously, it's an amazing wine and excellent for the price point. The average price for this wine, everyone, is at $17 in your stores. So obviously, if your favorite stores don't yet carry the Bodegas Olarra, tell them to contact DMV Distributing. For the price and quality of these wines, it's absolutely fantastic.
Or 17 or less.
17 or less for this bottle, exactly. Aromas for me, there's definitely a lot of blackberry and plum aromas that is, it's kind of refreshing, and then the taste goes along right with it. It's a very fruity and a little bit of a spicy wine.
Those are very typical characteristics for Rioja, and it's kind of, we're going to get across the board. We'll get into some gaminess, and we'll get into those different spices and cloves and stuff like that. But that's a typical characteristic of Rioja, and what I love about Rioja most of all. I like the modern stuff, but I like this more traditional approach to them as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, everyone. Well, we are going to move on to our second wine, and before we do, we are going to have a trivia question for our first giveaway of the evening, which is a 5-pack of Choquette chocolates. So remember, we will pick one winner for this, and definitely feel free to join in, make your best guesses, and win yourself some chocolates. If you do win, remember to write us on our DMV Facebook page. There's what you'll win. Thank you so much, Choquette Chocolates, for participating with us and supporting Virtual Vino with DMV. I really want to try some chocolate one day as well. And I believe chocolate would also pair really excellent with this whole Rioja lineup.
Absolutely.
A little bit of a dessert and go. So trivia question number 1, everyone. Besides Rioja, what is another region in Spain popular for their Tempranillo?
And pour.
Yeah. Yep. And next, we're going to have the Reserva. Over here. There we go.
All right.
Tuck the Crianza back in the bed here. A fancy virtual Vino bags. If you do have a participating store, you can pick up your 4 packs for this tasting and all future tastings. Nice little carry bag. You can actually fit 6 wines in there. I know because I've done it.
Devin, I can't answer this question, huh?
I mean, we could try. I'm sure we could,
I don't know if you'd get it right.
Chocolates. Exactly.
No, I might get it wrong.
Yeah. Does anyone have any guesses out there?
Because I think that's the tough question to ask. It's a loaded question. There might be more than one correct answer.
I believe that we let 2 be the other correct answers. So it's 1 of 2.
Yeah, we were looking at a couple.
We had 2 answers for it. So whether you guessed 1 or 2 of them. Any guessers out there? You can cheat and use Google. It's okay. I've done it. Sabrina, the questions are.
It is hard because it's the king grape of Spain, pretty much. But it is predominant in certain other areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if anyone knows the name of my dog, that would help.
Yeah. Does anyone know the name of Barry's dog? Because if you do,
that could give you a hint.
Hint. Juan Carlos. Geography and I don't play well. Good try, Sabrina. How do you use Google?
Yeah.
You guys
Oh
are
my
killing-
God. Ex Alexa.
Yeah. Anyone have an Alexa over there?
She hasn't been nice to me lately, so I don't know.
We'll come up with
Exactly.
another question. Another one.
One of the most famed regions out of Spain is Rioja, and it's probably the best known region out of Rioja. But there's a second or third region out of Spain that are pretty well known that produce from the same grape,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it's a loaded question. But I know there's another two primary. One in particular, there's another primary region that produces almost 100% exclusively Tempranillo. They might call it something else, but it is another wine producing very close to Rioja that produces Tempranillo.
That do produce it. Oh, we have a guess of Catalonia. No, it's not that. Tanya asked, "Can we Google Barry's dog's name?" I don't think so. But good try. Guess I need a wine tour of Spain. Exactly.
Part of the problem is that Tempranillo also has a lot of different. Barry, help me out. Different names, so cinnamon.
Right, that's right.
So that it'll be under a lot of different names like Eau de Louvre, Tinto Fino, Tinto del País, and it probably has another 20 or 30 names that it goes by. So it is known primarily as Tempranillo, but it has a lot of different names to it. What's the word, Barry?
The
Cinnamon.
synonyms.
Yes. Say
Yeah.
it.
Valencia? Oh no. Good try. No one even Googled it to cheat. It pops right up. I tried it myself. Did I? Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious what the answer is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Valencia
All right.
does do the oranges though.
That was
good.
We won't break your hearts any longer. All right, we're gonna save our chocolate for later then, everyone.
So if it was in Portugal, then it'd be a Douro. Or in Spain, it could be a Duero or Ribero.
But Barry's dog's name
is I spell it Douro. So depends on whether you're on the Spanish or the Portuguese side, how you pronounce it.
So Ribera del Duero would be Tinta del País, what is it? Yeah, Tinta del País for Ribera del Duero, which is Tempranillo. And in Cerro, I think they call it Tempranillo. It's escaping me right now, but it might have a second name.
All right, everyone. Well, we are going to move on to the Reserva now. We're going to save our 5-pack of Chouquette chocolates for later.
I knew those two regions. Do I get the prize? No.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to our sponsors.
We'll talk to our sponsors. I'm sure we can hook you up if you knew.
I'll keep on trying throughout the night. Don't worry.
Exactly. And remember, everyone, after today's video, we do post a poll so you can vote for your favorite wine this evening. And then everyone that votes and participates in that, you also get in for a chance to win a 5-pack of Chouquette chocolate. So we're going to move on to our second wine of the evening. I'm very excited to try this. Juan Carlos is going to explain this wine as well for us. And it is the Reserva. So those of you that are tasting along with us in this wine, please let us know what you're thinking. Ask Juan Carlos any questions that you may have about it, and enjoy.
I'm excited about this because what we were discussing about before about the Crianza and that this is perhaps my first vintage where I have Crianza and Reserva the same vintage in the marketplace at the same time. Maryland and a couple of other states, and I just sold out of it in New York, but I moved on to 15 Reserva. So as soon as we sell out of the 12 Reserva in Maryland, they'll be moving on to the 2015 vintage. This is quite possibly the first time in 5 years that's first time in the 10 years that I've been with Olarra that I've had the same vintage of Crianza and Reserva in the marketplace at the same time. And when you guys get the Reserva, you'll kind of see that. But across the board, Rioja is always the body for us. In Rioja, the body of the wine is Tempranillo, so it'll be anywhere from 75 to 85% of the wine, and then we build up the wine with a little bit of Grenache, which we've kind of gone away from in the past couple of years, and then we use Masuelo and Graciano for the back end of it. So anywhere from 15 to 25% Grenache, Masuelo, and Graciano on the back end of it. So Tempranillo, always the body. And then we source from all three subregions that we had talked about at the beginning. And that's kind of traditional Riojan winemaking when you get the characteristics that you need from the subregion and from the grape varietals that you're using. Once again, for us, the body of the wine is always Tempranillo, and then we build it up with the additional grapes. There was a question that just popped up. So Crianza, what makes Crianza, Reserva, and Gran Reserva? We'll talk about Gran Reserva in a second. But Crianza was 2 years between barrel and bottle, a minimum of 8 months, no more than 14 months in barrel for Crianza, and the remaining up to 2 years in the bottle before it's released. For Reserva, it would be 3 years in total. So no more usually than 24, a minimum of about a year, and then the remaining time up until 3 years in the bottle. So it can't be released before it sees 3 years of aging within our cellars. A minimum of 12, no more than 24. And that's, Barry, what we were talking about before, one of the biggest restrictions that Rioja has put in is that it was kind of an unwritten rule, and we kind of abided by it. But kind of the beauty of Rioja is the bottle time that it sees, and the fact that it settles down in our cellars. And Barry was there once again, and you saw our bottle room. There was a boatload of bottles, and we had the space for it. So for you to keep a wine in a barrel at a winery for 3 years, it's easy because it's a 225-liter barrel and it's off to the corner and you don't have to worry about it. But part of the aging process is that it goes into this bottle for you, and it sits there and it kind of evolves, and then you get it off to market. Because if you take it from the barrel, put it in the bottle, and ship it out, the wine is not going to be, it's going to be a little bit disjointed, a little bit off whack. So you want that evolution and you want that aging process at the winery. So one of the biggest restrictions that Rioja has put for Reserva in particular is that you maintain that 3 year aging process. They mandate that you put the wine in a bottle. I believe it was 6 months before you're able to ship it, and you need to document that, and they need to go in and they need to document that before you're able to label it as Reserva. So that's one of the biggest restrictions. So Rioja, I haven't been in the business that long. I came into the wine business in the restaurant end of it. It's strictly Spanish wines in the early 1990s, but my family has always been affiliated with wines or restaurants, and I've been around this. But one of the biggest mistakes that Spain has made over the years is that they sacrifice quantity for quality, and that's going back to the late 70s, early 80s, where they weren't really paying attention to the quality of the wine. They just wanted to meet the demand, and they kind of tarnished. Once again, this is my opinion. Don't base this on. It's just what I think. And we created a bad name for ourselves. So Rioja is a DOC, which has higher standards, and they want to guarantee that you're getting the utmost quality out of that particular region. So hence the restrictions that are sometimes a handicap for a winery or winemaker, depending on what they're trying to do, because you could by all means have a Gran Reserva quality wine, but you can't label it Gran Reserva. So it's not necessarily that it's inferior to the Gran Reserva. It's just it didn't meet the aging criteria that they have there. So Barry, that's for Reserva, an additional 3 to 6 months in the bottle before you're able to get it out to market.
So what about the best grapes? You always hear about the Reservas talking about, the best grapes. How do they differentiate?
Once again, you're looking for that sugar content and something that's going to be a little bit more age-worthy in the quality of the fruit. And if you're putting a wine, you're putting a grape that doesn't have substance to it, it doesn't have, just to simplify stuff, it doesn't have grit to it, and you're putting that into oak for 24 months, it's gonna be a wood chip. You're biting into grape seed. The wood's going to overpower the wine. So you need a grape that's going to accept that oak aging. So if you put an inferior fruit in there, it's not going to age accordingly. And it's just not going to happen.
Gotcha. Now, this wine itself, it had a 91 point rating in Wine Enthusiast and 90 point in Wine Spectator. So, also, once again, the price point on this is fantastic, and it is absolutely delicious. If you're going to talk about, even the taste that you would get from this wine and what you'd want to pair it with, and definitely everyone, this is a bottle that you can get for $20 or less.
This is a reserve. This is something that you'll have for the next 10 years at the stage that it's at for a 2012 vintage. And 2012 wasn't a fantastic vintage. And I want to point out that 13, we almost walked away from the vintage entirely. We had a little bit of 14 production, and then 15 we'll have a boatload of. But in Maryland, we transitioned maybe 3 to 4 months ago from 2010. We got no 11. We jumped on to 12. And your next vintage, I'm not sure what your inventory is at now, but your next vintage is going to be 15 vintage within the next couple of months. So at Olarra, we had the Cerro Añón Crianza at the beginning, and I told you that it's not your average Crianza where you get a little bit more aging potential out of it. It's a higher quality fruit. So sometimes what doesn't make the cut for Reserva might necessarily, it could possibly become Crianza, and that's where that quality comes into play.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic. I would definitely pair this with a really rich pasta dinner. In my
do pasta. I love pasta just because of that. You pair an acidity with acidity, and you want something that marries with that and kind of brings you to tone. The thing I like about Reserva, especially after it sees a little bit more time in the bottle, is that you get those spices and cloves in there, and you get that subtle leather, tobacco, and all that stuff that's coming in, and that's Rioja Reserva as it starts to see a little bit more time in the bottle. It just kind of evolves for you.
Mm-hmm. Now, does anyone at home, are you drinking this along with us? We want to know what you're also tasting here. I know a few of you have this thing, you wrote it earlier. It definitely smells quite floral to me. It's like a little bit of a floral smoky blend.
That's a Tempranillo, without a question. And exactly. I don't know how technical you want me to get, but with on the Cerro Añón, that intensity that you had and those aromatics that on the Crianza was more. We have a higher base of American oak used. For the Reserva, we use a little bit more French oak, so it's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more. It's not necessarily muted. It's just the aromas that you're getting are a little bit more delicate, and all those spices and different notes come through for it. I love Rioja Reserva and Gran Reserva as it sees a little bit more time in the bottle, just because. And this is that wine that we were talking about before, where it becomes Pinot Noir but over a great period of time, not necessarily overnight. And we were discussing before where I skipped vintages that were much early. I mean, we're going from 12 to 15. This is 3-4 months ago we were on a 10-year-old wine. Today we're in an 8-year-old wine. 2 months from now we're going to be on a 5-year-old Reserva. And this is all for your marketplace and restriction of production and quality assurance that we have at the winery, where we produce less on a certain vintage than others.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it is absolutely fantastic. I see a few of you obviously out there drinking it with us. Definitely let us know what you think. We're going to move on to our third wine of the evening in just a minute. Now, we do have another trivia question for you. I hope that everyone here can have a better shot at this one. Now, this for the next trivia question, before we move on to the Olarra Clasico, we are going to pop this up here for you. Now, the winner of this trivia question is going to win a wine glass from here at Pop-Up Shop. So thank you here at Pop-Up Shop for supporting us on our giveaways. I know we like cute wine glass. That's what you can win. With this question, if the Rioja region stopped producing wine today, about how many years could they keep customers supplied?
That's
I feel like it's a little bit of an easier question than the last one.
Well, we're doing the price
It's like the price is right, guys. Exactly.
I was just about to answer that, and I realized it's a trivia question.
That wasn't for you yet.
No.
Although if I heard the wrong answer, you'll be like, oh no. Now remember, there's lag here, so we're gonna wait on your answers. While everyone's trying to answer this, I had a question. It's quite interesting to me. I kept seeing online, researching Bodegas Olarra, and it's known as the Cathedral of Rioja, which I think is something fun to share with people.
And that goes back to the architect that I was talking about at the beginning. And we got to understand that this was back in 1970. We're coming out of the end of the Franco regime. There wasn't really much money, and there was really not much to be had. And here's it was two families, maybe a third family that was in there, but it was two families that decided to build this winery. And 40 years later, this winery today, as we know, Bodegas Olarra, that was constructed 40 plus years ago, is still as modern as it was back 40 years ago. We don't need to make any changes as far as the reception. And I mean, we have cement tanks that were built into the ground, stainless steel tanks above, oak vats throughout. Everything was done, taken into consideration winemaking and the whole process. That 40 years later, we still have nothing to change at Olarra. The winery, we did some cosmetic changes just to make it a little bit more appealing, because it was a little bit was a lot of cement and stuff like that. So we put some glass and made it a little bit more attractive to the eye. But as far as reception and tanks and everything that was originally installed is still there. It's not a gravity-fed winery, but it feeds our needs. That's the only thing that's not modern about it.
Gotcha.
In the paella pit?
Actually gorgeous, yeah.
Well, we did lamb at Olarra. I think I sent you those pictures of the pit with the great cookings that we did.
Exactly.
But they knew the winemaker that we had and the architect that we had at the moment knew what it was about. And that's a big fire pit that shoots up, like 2 or 3 stories, and that's where we cook the lamb on.
Yeah,
that's like super wine and s'mores.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the wine is fantastic, and the food was fantastic, and the combination was just unbelievable.
Well, Barry, for me, I don't know if you recall being at the winery, but when we were in that cellar, the aromas that you get, like when I sip these wines and I get those aromatics, it's kind of what comes through on the nose. It brings me back to be in there. So I like to, when you talked about modern winemaking, big extracted fruit, I understand that, I respect that, I enjoy that. But this for me brings me to a place. And if you're there and you're sipping the wines, this is what's in the glass. And you kind of get that at home here in the States, in my opinion. But I have a lot of opinions. Right.
All right.
My wife is not listening, or else she would be, stuck in that right now. But
okay, so it looks like the person that was closest to our answer is going to be Mindi. So congrats, Mindi.
Right.
The answer here is between 3 and 4 years on average that the wineries and producers in the Rioja region, if they just stopped today, they can continue to supply to their customers. Now, we did dig a little bit deeper, and a few of the wineries produce so much that are, still remaining in their barrels because of how long that, you have to age your wines, sometimes up to 20 years, that they might be okay for another, 8 to 9
when you're dealing with Gran Reserva. We're on 2010 vintage, so I technically have 2020 in the barrel right now. So I'll be producing wine for the next 10 years from that.
Exactly. Yeah. So congratulations, Mindi. Write DMV on our Facebook page with your email address and mailing address so that you can get your pop-up shop custom wine glass there. Enjoy it. Send us pictures of some good vino inside of it as well that we can share for you. And we're going to move on to our third wine of the evening, the Olarra Clasico. I'm very excited to try this as well.
So this is Barry. This I'm kicking myself because I have some wines downstairs which have the new packaging. So you're going to get a new packaging on this wine, and it's really pretty. You'll get a new case to it, but this is kind of our old traditional approach at it, and we kind of put the winery in the front and changed it up a little bit. But you're at the end of it. It'll still be 2015, but it'll have a slightly different label going forward. I normally don't like to change labels mid-vintage, just because it's not a good thing. But we did it just because we're we. But when Bodegas Olarra started in the idea of Bodegas Olarra started in the late 1960s, it was two families that decided to build this winery. Olarra was a gentleman by the name of Luis Olarra was one of them, and then an unnamed second family, which currently owns the winery, the majority of the winery, about 95+% of it, which is a family at the time was called Usin. So that was the original second proprietors of the winery. But the name of the winery was Olarra just because there was a flamboyant kind of guy that was there, and he was just a happy-go-lucky guy, and he wanted his name on the winery, and he was the majority investor at the time. Today, the second family owns it, but it kind of started with this gentleman, Luis Olarra. And the second family doesn't like to be in the limelight, and they like the business, they like producing quality wines, but they decided not to put their names on the winery and continue with what Luis Olarra had set out to do at the beginning. So
probably helped in the purchase price too when they bought it.
What's that?
It probably could have helped in the purchase price. They got to let the guy keep the name.
Yeah, quite possibly. No, because he went on to do another winery in Navarra, and I think as well as La Mancha, but he never had the fame that he did in Rioja, Bodegas Olarra. But he opened up a second winery in Navarra and a third winery in La Mancha, if I'm not mistaken. We could go a lot more in depth into that, but Olarra Clasico, it's Olarra, and it's our most classic approach at it. So on the two Cerro Añón wines, where we're doing, on the first one, we were doing, both of them is stainless steel fermentation at the beginning of the process. Some of them is newer French oak, some of it is newer American oak. For Olarra Clasico, we do more of a classic approach at it. So yes and no. We're doing fruit sourced directly from Rioja Alta, a little bit of Alavesa, but primarily Rioja Alta. We're not necessarily doing stainless steel temperature control fermentation. We're doing an oak vat fermentation. I don't know if I might have not done it, but I sent Devin some pictures of these oak vats that we have at Olarra that are 50,000 liters. And this wine, Olarra Clasico, and a lot of the wines for superstitional reasons go into these oak vats before being bottled, just because that's the way the old winemaker used to do it. The previous winemaker used to do it. And Olarra Clasico still maintains that traditional aspect where it goes into these large oak vats. Over here, we do Tempranillo, going away from the Grenache a little bit on the two Cerro Añón wines. But on the Olarra Clasico, we come back to that Grenache, and we're still adding that Grenache to it because the Grenache is going to give you, I think it gives you a little bit more rich fruit, a little bit more depth to it. But then we also add the Masuelo and the Graciano to it. And this will be something that's aged 18 months primarily in American oak versus French oak, except for the Crianza where we did primarily American oak.
So back to an earlier question I was giving you regarding modern style versus traditional style. Do you consider this to be a more traditional style?
Yes and no. We go back to that thing where we're releasing Reservas earlier and earlier. What gives Rioja that traditional style and that rusticness to it and that gaminess and that barnyard characteristic. I think it's the more time it sees in the bottle. And Barry, one of your favorite wines was the previous vintage on this wine, which was, what was it? You recall?
Last Hannah? Are you talking about the?
No. Olarra Clasico was 2009.
Right. Oh, that's right. Right. Yeah, it was.
Last vintage on.
We went from 9 to 15.
6 years later.
That's right.
On Olarra Clasico, and I've had other vintages. It's just that 2009 was spectacular, and up to I think it was 8 months. It was amazing. 2009. Is that fair? 8 months ago.
Yeah.
It's a wine that's.
In fact, I've got a bottle over here.
Evolved for a longer period of time. It's not fair to say. I think Cerro, Añón, and Reserva and Olarra Clasico Reserva will evolve for the same amount of time. It's just this is going to have a little bit more gaminess to it, a little bit more richness, and a little bit more depth. Cerro Añón is a little bit more about the elegance, and that somebody brought it up before, where it has that Pinot Noir-like characteristic, where it's a little bit lighter on the palate. This is going to have a little bit more of that depth and grittiness to it, and those earthy overtones and that animal characteristic to it. And that's Olarra Clasico. And Cerro Añón will give you that gaminess, and it'll give you that barnyard characteristic, but it's always going to be a little bit more delicate.
Animal character. We love the animal characteristic.
No, it's gamey. It's meaty. It's bloody. I mean,
we used that description earlier.
Yeah, we love that description. There's certain descriptions in wines that can be so much fun.
It's just I love Olarra Clasico because it's gamey. It just gives me that it's not fair to say that there's blood characteristic to it. I was at a can't remember where I was the other day, and there was a group of people. This is going back 6 months ago, and we were talking about finding wines and we were talking about the different process and how we use a vegetable-based gelatin to kind of find the wines. No, or we'll use some type of filters, like earthy filters, to find it. But in this particular one, I've seen stuff where they still use egg whites for it, but a typical way of finding wine sometimes in Rioja was to use bull's blood to find the wine. So you would pour after a bullfighter, and this is stuff that I've heard, don't quote me on it again. They would line the top of the wine with the bull's blood, and the blood would soak down, and all that sediment would soak down to the bottom, and then they would take the wine out. So I think that's where some of that iron characteristic and that gaminess comes from, in my opinion.
I have also read that before. It's quite interesting.
Don't tell your vegetarians about that.
No, I know, but I have during tasting. That was a huge mistake.
That's the vegan wine or something. No, we don't do that anymore.
So one of the fun things is that we're trying 2 Reservas back to back, and obviously it's 2 different vintages. But how would you compare this? You've had the 2015 vintage of the Añon that we're going to be
It's still young. 15 is going to be a much better vintage than 12 was. 2015 has a little bit more intensity to it and has a little bit more depth and grit to it than the 12 does. But 12 is still substantially young. The biggest differences to me is the noses are worlds apart. And on the Cerro Añón, it's delicate, it's elegant, and you get those subtle spices in there. And then you move on to the Olarra Clasico, and you get that intensity and that depth and that gaminess to it. And even on the color, we can't go back to the color unless we pour both of them back out again. But on Cerro Añón, you put a white background to it. It's going to be a little bit more translucent, and you're going to get that clear granite color on the top. And then the Olarra Clasico, it's also 3 years younger, but you're going to get a little bit more of that ruby color and just intensity to it. So it's still not there. And even when it gets there, when we were drinking the 2009 8 8 months ago, it still had this richness and lushness to it that doesn't exist now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not quite a horizontal tasting. You know,
Well, we'll do that next because we'll have a 9 and 10 of
well, that's more of a vertical, though, right? That'd be the vertical tasting. Would be a vertical tasting that we'll do next.
Well, we'll have the 9 and the 10, and
yeah.
I mean, 10 by a lot of critics was dubbed one of the best vintages ever. Depending on who you are, maybe 9 was better or 10 was better, but 10 was definitely the better vintage of the two, according to critics. But I think 2009 has kind of evolved, and for us, at least at Olarra, it's become much more than what we anticipated it to become. And we'll try it now, but we'll try it next up. But this is we're talking 3 sub-regions. Añón is sourced from all 3, and the Olarra Clasico comes from primarily the Rioja Alta. So you get a little bit more warmth and a little bit more concentration out of straight Rioja Alta than you would from Alavesa. Alavesa is more about that acidity and that elegance to it, but also the grit to it. It also has body to it.
Oh man, I can't wait to try this. Are you ready to jump in this?
I haven't poured as much as you guys have, but I've been drinking.
No, you're good. Well, the Olarra Clasico, everyone, absolutely fantastic. For an average price for $21 in store, the quality is amazing. You know, I just want to note it had a 92-point rating by Wine Enthusiast.
And the previous vintage that they had was 97 points decanter. And once again, it was 8 months ago. We were on that vintage until 8 months ago. And not because we had to, because we had other vintages between. It was just that the vintage was so good that why get rid of it? And we kind of allocated it for the U.S. just because we knew it was going to have that time. And once again, it's something that Barry fell in love with. And I think he was astonishing to the very end.
I still have some. I was going to reach for it over here.
You have some 9 there?
Yeah, that I kept, yeah. Absolutely. When I do classes in some of my stores, I like to do exactly kind of what we're doing next with the vertical tasting, where we can do some different vintages like that back to back.
So where are you, Barry? You see
that? I know, I'm jealous. I'm on my way there, Carlos.
That's 1973 Olarra Clasico, and this is Reserva, but this is the 1973 Olarra Clasico, and you can see the bottle fill on it, which is not. Actually, it's not bad for 1973. It's not.
Let me see the top of the capsule. Have you Coravined it?
No, it's not leaking.
Okay, I'll bring my Coravin.
Yeah, we're gonna come visit.
It's actually a really decent fill, and I think I have 3 to 4 bottles left of this, and I don't know if this is the one that we opened up, but it's not going to be what you have in the glass today. But when you're able to buy something for $20 a bottle, and it's something that's going to evolve for you over the next 40, 50 years, that for me is golden. And you know, I try to buy a case of something and hold on to a couple of bottles, and I'm buying them.
And that's why I was talking about the high QPR. Even though we're going up a price point for this tasting, this is some of the best values. I mean, if you compare these wines to Bordeaux and to Burgundies, it's amazing. I mean, you know, it's just astonishing for what you're getting.
Well, we have a question here for you. What would you eat with this? So your pairing recommendations with the Olarra Clasico.
What? You there, Devin?
I don't know if I was muted or not. Sorry. Lori asked, what would you eat with this? So what would you pair the Olarra Clasico with?
Once again, for me, the Clasico, it's just so rich and typical Rioja that I would like something along the lines of lamb, something greasy, something fatty. It has that rich acidity on the back end of it, but you also have some great body to it at the same time. It's not a California cab that's, big intensity, but it has a little bit of body to it. And I would like to go into something gamey on this. Once again, something on the grill. The lamb is like a cheat note. You go into cheeses and stuff, but I would like something a little bit gamier.
No, I agree. And speaking of cheese, I would definitely pair this perhaps with a more strong cheese of sorts. But speaking of cheese, so we're going to have our final trivia question of the evening. And the winner of this, before we move on to our two Grand Reservas, which I can't wait to try, is going to win a $50 gift card to Firefly Farms. So sorry, Juan Carlos, you cannot win this either. No, but I think you want to.
I absolutely love that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And we're so proud and happy to have Firefly Farms as a presenting giveaway sponsor for our virtual Vinos. So whoever wins this question, you're getting a $50 gift card sent to you via email, and you can use it on their site. And you'll have delicious, award-winning Maryland artisan cheeses delivered right to your door, even during all of this. So, and you can pair it with our Bodega Olarra wines. So let me find our question here for you. All right. So there you go, everyone. How many years has Spain been making wine with its indigenous Tempranillo grape?
I can't help you. I cheated with Rioja, but I can't help you with Spain.
Barry knew this one right away earlier when I asked him.
I did know this one, but that's what makes it Rioja such an incredible value too.
Exactly.
The other, I keep talking about all the food that I got to consume with Carlos, and I keep wanting to call it prosciutto, but it really wasn't prosciutto. It was
jamón serrano.
Yeah, that stuff.
And we did some
the acorn eating ones.
Pata negra, which is the acorn fed pig that they do. But pata negra was the ham that you're talking about.
It was just unbelievable with these wines, and served with every meal. And as much great wine as we got to drink, we also ate as much food. I mean, it was that's all we did was eat and drink and drive. And poor Carlos was sleeping while he was driving.
We did a little bit of driving.
Now, James Freeman is the closest so far with 753 years, but not close enough. Ooh. Yeah, and I also love the 753 years guess. Quite exacting. We'll see if any of you get closer. You can guess more than once.
If you go to Spain and you try to make dinner reservations for 7 or 8 o'clock at night,
it's not happening.
It's not happening. They're not even open.
We went to dinner in Logroño. I think it was about 8, 9 o'clock, and we were one of the first ones in. And by the time we walked out of there at 12:01, the restaurant was pretty much filled. But,
right, and all the children are running around.
Yeah. And once again, I think we had. I would have loved a more personable experience, but the fact that we had those 20+ English. It was interesting.
They always make it better. I've been to the United States.
They were characters.
Oh, Tanya's getting closer, everyone. Let's see.
So, Devin, you see Barry in that photo that you have up right now, right?
I do. What are you up
the
to?
highlight of the person on that trip and the troublemaker is the gentleman to his right.
That's right. Yeah.
He was
Gonzo. We can talk about it.
He was my secondary co-pilot that would.
You won't mind?
Oh gosh.
Mid-sentence, and then Barry would jump in.
Yeah, classic Staten Island humor.
Right.
No,
Well,
he was.
those
He
New
was
Yorkers.
Mr. Jersey.
Oh, he's a Jersey.
He was
Gotcha.
Jersey.
No, but we would be driving, and Barry would be, because Barry would stay up and he would talk to me the whole way, and Pete or Barry would sit in the front with me, but Pete would talk and he would fall asleep, and then wake up like 15 minutes later and pick up on the sentence that he fell asleep on, and it was the
Phenomenal.
craziest. It was the craziest thing. I mean, he would just pick up subjects like right off, he would lose a beat.
James. Oh, sorry, Juan Carlos.
The
All right,
free man.
we're going to give it to James Freeman, everyone. Close to 2,000. So, yes, over 2,000 years ago. So, congrats, James. You won yourself a $50 gift card to Firefly Farms. Enjoy your cheese, pair it with the delicious Bodega Olarra Vino. Mindy, yeah, you were very close, Mindy. We're in full with James. 1979, a fantastic year. I was not alive during that year, but sorry. Okay, so we are going to move on to our last wine of the evening. However, we do have two vintages of this wine that we're going to try tonight, because some of you may have the 2009 and some the 2010. So we're going to try them both. They're fantastic, so why not open both of them? I know, for instance, the 2010 has a 96-point rating by Decanter, so that's saying something, everyone. So we're going to start off with kick it off with the 2009 with Juan Carlos.
So this is what we were talking about before, but the Gran Reserva aged for 5 years, and this is another one where the bottle aging requirement before it's released has increased substantially, and the DO of Rioja regulates that. So Gran Reserva, by all means, the best fruit made within the best vintages. So we have in the past decade, in the 2000s, we probably walked away from 2 vintages on Gran Reserva. We might not have 13, and I believe it was 16 or 17 that we might not have Gran Reserva production. Definitely 13. So we'll have 11, we'll have some 12, and then bypass 13. So Gran Reserva is only made in exceptional vintages. Once again, it's a blend of Tempranillo. We use Grenache, a little bit of Masuelo and Graciano. Aging time is 5 years, no more than 3, no less than 2 in barrel, and then the remaining time in the bottle till it's able to be released, but made in exceptional vintages. And the reason I keep on emphasizing on exceptional vintages is that used to mean something before, because we were dealing with old vines, but now we're dealing with vines that could be in excess of 60 years old. So an acceptable, a great vintage comes more than we're able to control the quality of the vintage. Not we're able to control the age of the vine guarantees you a quality vintage more often than not. So the older the vine, the better fruit that you're going to get from it. So you're almost guaranteed an extraordinary vintage year after year, with the exception of, the kind of what we're going through right now, that everything just falls apart. So there's been a couple of vintages where we haven't been able to produce Gran Reserva, but they're very few and far in between. But before, they used to be a little bit more. I might go 3 to 4 vintages before I had a Gran Reserva production, just because the fruit didn't meet the quality or the standards of the aging requirement for it. So it would be declassified and put into Reserva juice or Crianza juice, just because it wasn't going to meet the standards. But over the years, it's become easier and easier to produce Gran Reserva, just because the age of the vines and the quality of the fruit that you're getting year after year. Once again, all 3 subregions: Tempranillo, Garnacha, a little bit of Masuelo and Graciano. Both on the Reserva and the Gran Reserva, we add a little bit of a white varietal called Viuda, which we were talking about before, and he's just adding that to add a little bit more acidity to it, and also because it's white wine helps maintain the pigmentation of the wine for a longer period of time. So on the 2009 that we're trying right now, this is as deep and rich a color that you're going to get. This is an 11-year-old wine currently right now, and it's, if I'm to be blind tasted on this, no clue that this is 11 years old. I want you to tell me what you're able to drink that's 11 years old. What's your market price on Cerro Añon Gran Reserva in Maryland, give or take? How much?
About 30. On average, $30 a bottle.
This is an 11-year-old $30 bottle of wine that you're able to get, that nowhere close to showing you its age.
Uh-huh.
And I don't see it drinking any differently in the next 5 to 8 years.
Yes.
It is fantastic. I get a lot of, especially aroma-wise, a lot of cherry and vanilla.
Yeah, and those
Right off the
are
top.
typical tasting notes of Rioja, especially when it hits that mid stage, and then it gets into that gamey characteristic of it. But and the more French oak that you use, the more of that those vanilla notes that you're going to get.
So if you were to compare this to something you would find in Burgundy or Bordeaux,
There's a big French influence in Rioja, without a question. So we were talking
Right.
about ages before. So Rioja, because of that French movement, became a thing, and I think it was 1850 and 1860, give or take. And then it kind of progressed from there. But that's where that French, the phylloxera and the French influence became in, it was 1860, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of where that French influence started, and who taught the Spanish how to make wine. Pretty much is the age-old joke for Riojan winemakers. But there is a huge French influence in Spain, and yes, they did come in and kind of modernize what we were doing and kind of school us on what we were doing wrong. But in Rioja in particular, it was a primary region back in the mid 1800s, and it became the first DO within Spain and the first DOC, which is the highest standard of Riojan wine producing in Spain. But Rioja was the first one to receive that ultimate standard.
Well, it is really
it's
amazing.
exquisite.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would pair this with food, just because I don't want to.
It's just great to sip
It
at.
tastes like nothing, but it tastes great out of the bottle for sure.
And it has body, and has grit, it has
It
grit
does.
to it, and it has substance to it. But you could actually sit down and sip a multitude of glasses of this and not feel it, not realize it's not a meal in a bottle. And I love some of these big extracted wines, but after a glass, I can't. But this, if I'm not being watched, I could quite possibly polish off a bottle.
If there's some of the acorn-eating pigs around,
What's
I
that?
have to have some of that with it.
No, with the two of you, you're done with the bottle. I'll pour your glass more there, but I'm behaving tonight.
Well, All right, so next we're going to talk about the 2010 vintage of the Grand Reserve. I'm excited to try that as well to wrap up the evening. We want to thank everyone that's participated and watched with us. Oh yeah, sure. We're not going to dump this. We're just going to grab another glass. So Barry's just grabbing extra glasses for us. And thank you once again, Juan Carlos, for agreeing to do this with us, for participating tonight. I hope it won't be your last time joining DMV with one of these tastings. Everyone, if you have any questions before we go, please let Juan Carlos know. I know we did have a question, Juan Carlos, about has the pandemic at this point affected production at Bodegas Olarra? And do you think it's going to affect the wine moving forward before we move on to the content?
We're like in the U.S., we're an essential business in Spain, so it has not affected us in any way, shape, or form. Tending to the vineyards and whatnot, once again, it's an essential business, so we've been able to do everything, and Olarra is up and running with restrictions, but we've been up and running and doing what we're supposed to be doing. So no, I see no upcoming issues going forward with production.
Good. Well, that is great news, and we're very glad to hear it because I don't want this great quality of wine to stop coming to the U.S. and especially the Maryland and D.C. region anytime soon. It's absolutely fantastic. Those of you that are wondering where to get these wines, please contact us at DMV Distributing. We can help you out where you can find them. And once again, thanks so much for participating. We're going to let Juan Carlos go over the 2010 here and see how you guys think of this.
So again, this is a wine that mandatory we have to age for 5 years, but then the winery itself holds on to it for a longer period of time. So for those of you that had the 2009 and now trying the 2010, I think the 2010 the color is a little bit lighter than the 2009 that we had. So I think 2009 has gotten a little bit more depth to it, and 2010 has a little bit more elegance to it. But both wines are incredible, and you get that polishedness on the back end of it. I personally think that 2009 has a little bit more body to it and a little bit more roundness to it than the 2010 has at the moment. Once again, we're talking about critics and them dubbing 2010 an extraordinary vintage versus 2009 an excellent vintage. But for me personally, I tend to prefer 2009 over 2010 just because of the depth that it has. Not that 2010 is bad. It's what I have to sell now, so I can't say that. But I just tend to prefer 2009 over the 10 vintage as on my palate personally. And Devin and Barry, you've had 9 and 10 side by side as well. What do you think?
Than in the 10. Do you find that?
What's that?
I find the oak more pronounced in the 9 than in the 10.
I'm gonna.
It's very interesting doing it back to back because they're so different.
No, and I just realized that I hadn't tapped my two.
You're still on the 9?
This is what happens when you drink.
Lesson be learned.
Carlos, my man.
Once again, I had family over for the first time in like 2.5 months today, so there was drinking going on beforehand, and now I guess I'm catching up, and I hadn't tapped my 2010 yet, so I apologize.
Okay.
Now you're catching up.
Definitely a little bit more oak in the 2000. There's a little bit more polishedness to the 2010, though, Barry. No?
More polish?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's more of a fresh oak than a rich oak that you're getting on the 2009. But I think the 2009. This reminds me of like when you shave off a pencil or something like that, where it's an oak that's pronounced, but it's cleaner. And then on the Olarra, on the Cerro Añon Gran Reserva 2009, the oak was a little dirtier, a little bit more moist, wet.
So both using the same American oak, new American oak.
For Cerro Añon Gran Reserva, primarily French and first year French oak barrels. There's a percentage of American oak that's used, but it's primarily malolactic fermentation and first year French oak barrels on both. More so on the 2010, but there is first year American oak used as well. The biggest difference 2010 versus 2009 is they're newer. There's more first year French and American oak used than there was in 2009. So 2009 might have had 4 to 5 year old barrels used in part of the process. So it's slightly older oak used for the 2009 production than there was for the 2010 production.
Which is interesting because I taste more oak on the 9 than I do the 10, and I would think I would taste less.
No, because when you do malolactic fermentation in a wine, the oak influence is at the beginning of the process, and it's a cleaner, crispier oak influence that you're getting. When you're doing aging in a slightly older American or French oak barrel, and you're not doing the mallow, the oak influence I think is greater into the wine. So I think you're absolutely correct. When you put wine into that first year barrel, that oak influence is at the very beginning, especially if it's undergoing malolactic, because that's a very volatile experience. So the oak influence is at the very beginning. But when you're using an older American oak barrel and you're putting the wine into a stainless steel fermentation process or another fermentation process, and then putting it into the oak, the oak influence is going to be greater. Whereas with the newer barrel, I think it's going to be a crispier, cleaner oak that you're getting out of it, which hence the 2010.
Wow.
Well, it is fantastic. Did anyone pick up the Grand Reserve this week? We're on the 2010 now. Anyone out there drinking it along with us?
And
I'm taking it home.
Day and night.
Well, Barry and I are going to arm wrestle for these after this.
You always bring 2 bottles because you never know if one is
the 2009, 2010, the packaging changed substantially from one vintage to the next, and it was a reamp that we did on the package going back to original. So this is kind of our package that we had in the marketplace for the past 15 years, and this is going back to basics and our relaunch of the Cerro Añón brand.
Yes, everyone. So go to your local stores. These wines are available throughout Maryland and DC. But if your favorite store in Maryland or DC doesn't yet have them, tell them to contact DMV Distributing and we can help you out. Up on the screen now are where you can find all 4 of these wines, 5 technically, 4.5, that we tasted today. We want to thank Eastport Liquors, Paul's Wine and Spirits, Liquor Locker, Thirsty's Wine, Dunkirk Wine and Spirits, McHenry Beverage Shop, and Yes Organic Market on Georgia Avenue in DC. So please go visit those stores, try these wines out, send us pictures when you try them. We'll forward them on to Juan Carlos and say, hey, he said that wine was so great and someone else went and enjoyed it. So we always want to see those from you all.
And Christy did too great of a job as a warehouse manager by only allowing you to have 1 bottle of the 2010. So if there are, we may be fighting over it. And
Barry's just trying to fight me for it. We want to thank our sponsors once again for our giveaways, Croquette Chocolates, Hero Pop-Up Shop, and Firefly Farms. Once again, after this video, please go to our poll. It's on the event page within DMV Distributing for our, obviously, May 22nd event here with Juan Carlos from Bodegas Olarra. If you vote on there, you're going to be entered for a chance to win a 5-pack of Choquette chocolates.
Cool.
So I know I'm going to go vote myself, see if I can score some chocolates.
And what about that other question that didn't get answered?
Yeah, we'll see. We're going to send somebody some chocolates. We're going to send Juan Carlos some chocolates too. So, once again, visit us at www.dmvdist.com. Please like us on Facebook and our Instagram. We post super fun videos, wine tastings throughout. We have some great fun things coming up for you all. And we hope that you continue to support us in our fun and crazy endeavor of bringing awesome guests like Juan Carlos on screen with us to tell you more about really delicious wines.
Yeah, I hope y'all had half as good of a time as I did. I love my time with Carlos. We always have a great time, and I'm going to drag him to Naptown, and we're going to do the next one on a sailboat, and just
I'm hoping for this to be over. So
yeah,
I mean,
and if it's not, we're just going to we'll be in a crowd of just a few people on the sailboat to justify it, and
exactly.
But
where there's Vino, you will find me.
And hopefully the people that were on tonight will enjoy joining us again and trying some of the wines again and new wines as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mindi. We hope you join us again next week. Now, everyone, next week we're going to have a great set of wines for you, another 4 fantastic wines. We are going to be at the same location here on our DMV Distributing Facebook page. However, it's going to start at 7 p.m. starting next Friday. So every Friday at 7 p.m. starting next Friday, You can join myself, Alex, Austin, and Dina next Friday.
It'll be fun.
We have the Colossal White, which is new, 2 stores throughout Maryland. I can't wait to try that. The Lion and Dove Rosé, one of my favorites. I'm going to be by myself next week, so I don't even have to fight with you over the rosé.
Hey.
The Confidential Red and the Ego Bodegas Fuerza. So an awesome, great, very shareable lineup. So put your friends together next week, 7 p.m. right here. Be on the lookout via our social media for where you can find all 4 of those wines. And if your store isn't participating, your favorite store you love to go to, come to contact us. We'll make sure they have all 4 for you ready to go. How's that sound, everyone?
And Carlos, man, I love you. I always have a great time with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Carlos.
I hate that we're not together having great food to go along with the great wine.
I want to see you. I want to see if you invite me back. Then I know that you were happy with it. But if you don't invite me back, then I know that you were.
You're always invited. I'll send you a key, my friend.
Whenever you do something in reference to Spain, I would be more than happy to join you, even if it's not my stuff. But you let me know.
We would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
We'll figure out a way to get you the wines or something. So
I appreciate it, man, my friend.
Well, thank you, Carlos. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating and joining us this evening. We'll see you back next Friday at 7 p.m. right here with a great lineup. I'll be with you. Unfortunately, Barry won't, but you'll be commenting and stuff.
No, I'm going to try to get to is there a karaoke bar that's open yet?
Well, we didn't talk about your karaoke moment.
We're going to end before that happens. You guys can
I'm trying to remember the name of the damn song, and I can't remember it, but it'll come to me.
What happens in Spain stays in Spain after quite a few glasses of wine. Look, they're all behaving in that photo, so we're going to dig up some of the...
I think we're all exhausted in that photo.
No, you guys were beat up. That was the end leg of it, and you guys were done.
Beat up by wine and a lot of amazing food. It happens.
Yeah.
Well, cheers, everyone. We will see you next week, 7 p.m. right here. Thanks to all of our sponsors.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I love sharing wine with everybody.
Yep. I'm going to go arm wrestle Barry for the 2010 Grand Reserva. And I will win. We'll post photos. Cheers.
Must be my glasses.
Yes, the glasses.